Good morning, everyone. This is Brandon Krieger from KNSS Consulting Group. Today's cybersecurity for your business. We're going to be talking about ransomware. My co-host with me is Monty from Spy Gadget Rentals. Monty, what's your website?
DPL-surveillance-equipment.com. I'll drop. Want me to drop it in there?
Yeah, just drop it into the chat.
Yeah. Okay.
Some little house cleaning tips, just so you guys know. We're really excited if anyone wants to jump into the discussion areas below. Jump in the video if you feel comfortable. Also, on the right-hand side, you can chat. We're going to be watching the discussion. If you have a question, you can do /Q, and we can put the question up on the screen. We can answer that. But today's topic is, what is ransomware? Now, I know a lot of us that are security professionals, people are watching. We've been seeing this in the news for last 6 months to 1 year, and it's becoming rampant how it's increasing. So, Monty, what's your thoughts on ransomware?
Well, I think it's not as prevalent, not known as much as it should be. I think a lot of people are discovering as we speak what it is and for the first time. But it seems like all across the United States, people are finding out, more and more and how serious it is.
Oh, exactly. So we're on the same page. Some people watching this, we all have different levels of security. I'm going to answer a few questions, just talk of the high-level topics right now, so we're all on the same page. So first, what is ransomware? And I'm going to read a definition here and some examples I pulled off the internet. Ransomware is a type of malicious software designed to block access to a computer, system, mobile device now, until a sum of money is paid. So at first, ransomware, when it first came out, people were thinking about desktops and servers and that, but now it's gone to mobile devices and it's starting to become rampant, spreading out. Although ransomware is usually aimed at individuals, it's only a matter of time before businesses target as well. Well, we know that, listening to the media and reading all the articles that we have, that businesses are being attacked as well. So ransomware is going rampant across users, individuals, personal and business. It's hitting them all. So how does it work? A lot of us kind of think, okay, ransomware, we've heard in the news that, encrypts our file. So generally, criminals, what they do is they send you some sort of spyware, malware, something along that line through email, or it could be through a website. That what happens is you click on that link and that code runs in the background, which then encrypts all your data. And in that scenario, then all of a sudden a splash screen comes up with the count telling you instructions what to do in a countdown, right? You've got 24 hours, 48 hours to do this one action, to pay this ransom. And I was reading here anywhere from $50 to up to $5,000, depending on who's being hit in the ransom. And then you have to pay it by like a Bitcoin or some secure transfer by that time. The one thing that Monty and I talked about last week is it's not 100% sure that if you pay the ransom, it's going to be encrypted. They're going to send you the encryption key to encrypt your data. So what happens is people pay this ransom, and how encryption works is it encrypts all your files that you need a password, right, to be able to log in or get access to that. So if you don't have that encryption password, that key, then you can't get access to your files. So now you're basically dead in the water. Now for personal, we're looking at personal photos, maybe your accounting, maybe there's family stuff that you have there, legal documents, whatever that may be. But when you look at business, you might have client information, personal identifiable information, so date of birth, credit card information, clients, email addresses, physical addresses, their billing and purchasing history. You might have legal documents, data of confidential information from your company. So it can hit this broad spectrum of data and data classification. So when you look at this, you kind of look at the spectrum of anyone can get hit and how it affects the data, right? It encrypts the data no matter what the data's classification, what it is, it encrypts that. What do you think, Monty?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The horrible thing that's that people are surprised with is that the methodology from the hackers. See, a lot of times they use Bitcoin, and that's a cryptocurrency that they typically want you to pay in. and they make it sound like they're doing you a significant service by telling you about Bitcoin and explaining it to you and how it works and all that, just so you'll be comfortable with sending the Bitcoin to them. But remember, their sole purpose is to get that money from you, and once they get the money from you, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get your files. Usually they promise you're going to get your files back, but they're not obligated, of course, to get your files back. And once you get your files back, it doesn't mean that they're not infected with something. So we really should take into consideration that the data that they're after, is very, very valuable, and you have to back it up in a number of different places. We could talk about more, specifically about backups and all that. But that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make sure that they hold that data ransom. And as Brandon mentioned, you're typically going to have a very short time frame to get that data back, and the prices do double. Typically, if you're late, you're going to pay more. You're going to pay twice as much to get that data back if you're late in sending that ransom money over to the hackers.
Exactly, and as we've heard, I mean, all of us security professionals and people look in the news, the ransom goes up depending on the threat of who they're hitting, right? If it's a hospital, it can go up into the tens of thousands of millions of dollars that they're asking for. Home users, I'm seeing anywhere from, like I said, $200 to $5,000. So the ransom varies depending on the organization and how these hackers are trying to compromise that individual or company. So again, it's not the sense of, if you're not in business, if you're kind of on your own, you're not going to be affected. You can fall into this category of $200 to $1 million, depending on what you click on. I mean, I was talking to a person about a scenario that it could happen if you were just a general schmo surfing the internet and you were searching for boats and you were looking at buying a boat and you went to a site that you didn't know about, but it had a sale on boats, and you clicked on a link. It could have that embedded code that now you run through this ransomware scenario, and now you're infected. Now your files are encrypted. Now you have to go through this.
Well, that's the one of the key issues that we're dealing with here. Typically, it is going to be an infected website. So make sure you understand, if you go to a website, that it's actually a website that you're familiar with. And then make sure you understand that getting infected files comes in various forms from websites that are compromised, also from apps. And Brandon, I know you heard of, because see, a lot of this originally came from the situation with Apple. There was an app that the iOS users use on their phones called Transmission. Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, that was the first real attack on Apple's operating system, and it was through the iPhone and by way of that app called Transmission. And believe it or not, they snuck that through Apple's ecosystem, and they were able to infect that app and make the certificate look legitimate and get it, and the app was approved by Apple. But later on, Apple discovered, that it was indeed compromised. So they pulled the app from the store, locked it down, made sure that any particular downloads from that point on were approved, and that the version was updated. So again, the new versions of Transmission had to be updated in order to be accessible by way of the Apple's App Store. But this was the first time Apple ever experienced a compromise in their applications, and it was immediately fixed. So, supposedly only 60,000 people roughly were affected, which is small for Apple's ecosystem. But at the same time, it was indeed ransomware. And so if you're into file sharing apps or BitTorrent type of applications, make sure you keep an eye out for Transmission on the App Store.
See, and you're seeing Transmission, and that's one that was identified. The problem with Apple's ecosystem, as well as Google apps and all that, their scanning process on the applications is not where they need to be. And we know this, and all of us have heard this, is that security is still far behind. We're playing catch up. So what happens is these hackers write certain code. They don't know how to identify that code or have the trying to think of the identifiers to be able to say, oh, yes, that's malware, that's this. As they write new code and new ways of doing it, we're always trying to catch up. right? And getting the signatures I was thinking about. So always trying to get the signatures so that you put in your definition of, okay, search for this, right? So we're always behind when it comes to hackers and security. It's that race, right? So you're right, but the next application that comes out, Apple might not find it until all of a sudden now there's an infection. Right.
Well, this is the good news as well. You guys, when you download applications from any store, try and put an emphasis on what is this? What am I ultimately doing? Am I trying to get access to files and avoid copyright or trademarks or something? And does this app ask for access to my contacts? Does it really need my GPS location every time I use it or something? Try to exercise just a little bit of more precaution also when you get apps, and that way, even if the app is not ransomware, at least we'll know that we don't necessarily need to give this app complete access to our data, to our GPS, et cetera, et cetera. So a little bit of etiquette would probably go a long way.
Well, and talk about that. It could be data mining, right? It could go to that next level being malware, which then could have viruses, scripts, anything on the back end. So, I mean, you got to look at that process. Even if you give access to it, it's still data mining, right? If your contacts, your calendars, it's going through that list of areas that it's trying to connect with, and you're saying yes, 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 it starts to data mine what it's collecting. So it doesn't mean they're going to do malicious things with it, but it's collecting your information. And I mean, I was in a meeting last night, and we're talking about how, your Wi-Fi access point, as you're going now in retail stores, it's tracking you, right? The time you went to the store, where you were shopping, how long were you in that store for? And it's tracking that data mining of that whole scenario. So when we go back to ransomware, when you're downloading these applications and you have open access points, some of the free applications you're downloading because you want to test it out have banners. Well, those ad banners can have malware in it, where you click on it by accident. And I've seen people do it. I've done it myself, where you're scrolling through, you're doing something, you click on it by accident, it brings up the app store, right? And also then to ask you to download the app. But that actually could be malware. So one of the processes, and I'm just going to take a step back, people might not know, like the cost right now, and I was doing some research, I was on lavasoft.com, currently up to 2015, and how they've been tracking ransomware, $325 million have been spent by people being infected by ransomware up to this date, up to 2015. So I haven't been tracking 2016 yet, but $325 million has been spent paying out ransoms.
Wow.
So kind of give an idea. I mean, Chris is our insurance expert here when it talks about, cybersecurity and insurance. But think about that for individuals. If an individual had to pay, a 0.00% of that, he had to pay $50,000. How much would that affect their personal life in this economy? Look at what's going on. Their personal life, their mortgages, how they can, feed their family. If someone had to pay that. So you have to look at it in the big scale of things of how do you do the right things to protect yourself? And we're going to talk a little bit about that later. So Monty, I know you were doing some research, some articles. Was there anything that you found that was really interesting that people need to know?
Yeah, I think people are really gonna have to brace yourself. So you guys make sure you're sitting down because this is really gonna blow your socks off. Okay, just gonna throw some numbers out there. There's a British insurance company called Lloyd's. They estimate that cyber attacks cost businesses as much as $400 billion a year. This includes direct damage plus post-attack disruptions to the normal course of business. And some vendors and media forecasts put the cybercrime figure as high as $500 billion or more. So
that's million?
No, billion with a B.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're talking $500 billion.
Right. Yeah, that's Lloyd's. Lloyd's is a reinsurer. That's the insurer's insurer.
Right.
No one else can underwrite a catastrophic event like a hurricane or a tornado or something really drastic. You go to Lloyd's of London typically.
Right.
And just some other figures. there's a firm called Global Cybersecurity. They're saying that spending is expected to reach $60 billion, and this is way back in 2011, you guys. And it was forecast to grow at that time up to 10% every year during the next 3 to 5 years. And the U.S. accounted for more than half of all deals globally, triggered by growing cyber threats and increasing awareness amongst both organizations and consumers of accelerating breaches. Threats and increasing consumers of accelerating breaches and attacks from our report. So let me summarize that. Okay, this report was done in 2011, and even at that time, you guys, they were forecasting 10% growth. Okay, and so if we spent $60 billion way back in 2011, and that was forecast to grow by 10%, then we're looking at astronomical figures as far as spending. This is what's being spent every year just to try and keep up. We're not necessarily saying that we're making any progress, but the companies all over the planet are spending a significant amount of money just playing catch up, as Brandon was talking about.
All right, and then Chris is saying that's probably considered because of the reputation and embarrassment factor and dirty little secret. Even primary insurers are having difficulty pricing cyber too early in the life cycle. One thing we know, instances will be parabolic. So, I mean, I agree with them. What happens is when a company gets infected or has a scenario or a situation like this, what happens is there's the actual technical aspect of trying to recover, and then there's the PR, the public relations. So if they can throw money at it and keep it quiet, they eliminate the public relations fiasco that they have to go through. That, maybe there were a security company or someone that's supposed to have the secure information, and now they're the ones that got ransomware, right? And they're the ones that got infected, and there's ones now. How am I going to trust them? How am I going to trust them with securing my business? Look at hospitals, right? Especially in the United States, when they have money, like investors, and backing them up. So what happens is, how am I going to support the hospital? They can't secure the patient's information, right, coming in. So it's really crazy when you think about all these things.
Yeah, this is one of those areas, you guys, where we really are learning a lot in real time in terms of how to defend against these issues. And I was reading, Brandon, lately in the cybersecurity field, every company is trying to position themselves, because this is such a hot growth area, because corporate America and corporations all over the planet are looking to acquire the necessary talent and skills, which means that there's an arms race going on in this particular sector. So if you're a large company like Raytheon, like Microsoft, like
any of them, really.
Yeah, any of them, you name them. What they're trying to do is they're trying to acquire talent. See, sometimes you can grow talent internally, organically within your corporation, and then sometimes you got to go out and buy that talent, literally acquire it by buying other companies. So we're seeing a massive consolidation. There's mergers and acquisitions going on right now, because companies are literally scrambling, trying to make sure that they acquire the talent. There's a company, there's various types of companies, but there's a company that discovered the Heartbleed virus, if you will, a vulnerability rather, and that company is being acquired by a very large company. So there's a lot of mergers and acquisitions, because everyone is pretty much trying their best to get a hold of the talent, get the necessary products and services under one umbrella for one company, so you can offer hopefully a suite of products and services to your customers.
Exactly. No, it's true. I mean, that's what you're finding with companies. They're scrambling, right? They're scrambling, trying to see, one, how can they deal with internally themselves? And then, like you said, two, can they find the talent in the atmosphere of cybersecurity, or do they have to start acquiring companies, if they're a big enough company, to have internal departments now that company comes in, now that company is that security department, which now they would leverage that and use that as their type of service. So, example, like an IBM type company, where they bring in companies, they have them for cloud services, security services, and all that, and they acquire them. So Chris had a question. Do you know that cybersecurity insurance doesn't need to know how much data costs before insuring businesses? Now, I'm going to ask Chris that. Is that true? They don't have to do a threat analysis on data to say how much the data is, the value of the data, or at least to do that evaluation. The scary thing is that the FBI tells the police departments to pay the ransom to get their data back. Now, this is something that I've read too. Monty, I don't know if you read that as well, as a lot of police agencies are just saying pay the ransom.
Well, yeah, typically, see, a lot of people are really not proficient at speaking confidently to hackers and such. So, yeah, in an effort to keep people from, going too far as trying to understand the implications of the threat and whether or not the hackers are legitimate or whether or not the data is indeed compromised or not. So, yeah, in order to keep it very simple for the victims, it is suggested, that they go ahead and pay, mainly because, see, we don't want to put people in the position of trying to figure out the seriousness of the threat, whether or not this is legitimate. What are my courses of actions and all of that. That's why we have professional hostage negotiators, for instance, in the real world. So, the average consumer, for instance, is not in a very good position to determine whether or not this is serious or not. So I can understand that perfectly.
True. And Chris is answering Chris's question. It is a mix, but underwriting criteria doesn't do a deep dive that would expect to really understand the risk. So when you're looking at a risk assessment, I mean, I know on our side, when talking about security, we have to do a data analysis. You have to rank the data. You have to rank the criteria, the privacy, the security of it. You have to give, quantitative and qualitative, results on that data. So in a security aspect, you're supposed to do that. But I don't know too much about the insurance side of it. That's why I'm asking Chris, who is kind of our local expert here, what his expertise on it and what they do. But I know for auditing purposes for a corporation, they're supposed to do that. And
typically you would, Brandon, I don't mean to interrupt you, but typically you would want to do a thorough analysis and set some sort of standards before you underwrite anything. I know in the Bitcoin space with cryptocurrency, you have to have certain guidelines. And if I'm not meeting the guidelines as far as doing my part to make sure that I follow certain protocols, if you will, just like any insurance policy, typically, if you don't fulfill the obligations of the contract according to however it's spelled out, then you won't get the opportunity to make a claim. So, I would think that eventually the insurance companies will take a look at what they're underwriting. Right.
And that's what you have to do. I mean, as a company standpoint, in talking about insurance, you want to be able to classify your data so you know what can be lost and what is essential to your services. If there's data that you have historical data on images of family picnics over the last 10 years of your business, you lose that. It's not going to affect your business too much. But if you have your spreadsheets, your accounting, your data that is running your business, and you lose that, that's essential, right? And that's why we're talking about ranking the criteria of the data. And in the company side, where we're talking about security, if you don't do that proper audit, you don't know what you have, and you don't need to know what is insured and how you restore it. So it's really important to have this conversation, especially when you're looking at ransomware. And I think one thing what we'll get into right now is, so how do we protect ourselves? We're users, and something that, Chris brought this up is that for ransomware, police are saying, our people that are protectors are saying, just pay it and let it go. But what can we do? What can we really do to be proactive to protect ourselves?
Well, I think one of the things we should always look at is see if someone's asking me to pay money for my data, then that means that I don't really have control over my data, and I got to be careful, because believe it or not, you can back up your data, and I like the three-pronged approach, and Brandon can go into the details in terms of any specific methodology, but I like to have my data, Brandon, in three different places. One is on a portable drive that I take with me when I go on trips. One is an external drive is in my office, and then the other one is on a remote server, like an iCloud or a Dropbox or whatever, and that way, if someone does hold my data hostage, I can say, okay, that's fine. You can keep it. I'm going to download a copy of it from one of the devices or one of the remote storage servers that I have somewhere.
See, now this is the thing, and Monty's bringing up a great point. Talk about user, redundancy, user backups, right? If you do this properly, you wouldn't have to pay your ransom. Yes, it's a little bit of a frustration. You have to restore your system. You wipe your system and restore it. But what happens is you'd probably spend less money. And give you an example. Let's use that $5,000 benchmark. Say I got infected. I'm just a home user, and I got infected, and the ransom was $5,000, right? In Bitcoin, it was like, what is it now, 3 or 4 Bitcoin?
You mean the price?
Yeah, it's something along that line. But it costs like $4,000 or $5,000. It would be easier for me to restore my system from a backup from its data, take it to a computer shop, have them spend an hour to 2 hours reinstalling the OS, reinstalling all the applications, restoring for my backup, then me paying the ransom. So we have to look at that, and we look at a company side. On a company side, when they do redundancies, backups, they test their backups to make sure that the backup is live and there's no errors. So they do this continuity testing where they'll restore the backup and then run off the backup for a period of time to make sure the backup, there is no problems with it. And they'll keep doing this continuity testing. Well, what happens is if they can do that, then the backup should be good enough that they can go restore their system within a short period of time. And if they set up their security policies properly, probably within a couple hours, they should be up and going and fully running again. And from there, they can wipe out that one that's been ransomware and get going again. So the police right now are not really explaining what needs to be done. It's more of a quick fix. We don't know what to do. Just pay it, and hopefully, cross your fingers type mentality. They're gonna release. They're gonna give you the encryption key, and then they're gonna release your data. But doesn't mean that, like Monty said, there's not a rootkit there that's for later, that they set up a back door that they can get in later. So we're opening ourselves in a way that we don't know the whole repercussions. We're only getting the first symptom of it. Ransomware is potentially the first symptom. It doesn't mean they didn't leave something behind that they come back later, right? And then, of course, with criminals, they're not stupid. If they can get in once, they're going to try to get in again and again.
Well, speaking of that, Brandon, I don't want to change subjects too much, but this falls into the same line of reasoning. Our Federal Reserve, for instance, we were talking about last week. The Federal Reserve in New York was their accounts were compromised by a hacker who took, at that time, it was $80 million. Now they're estimated that it's gone up to $100-something million. And see, the Federal Reserve in New York, they house bank accounts for the various countries, the central banks for the various countries in the New York Federal Reserve. So the Bangladesh bank was taken for $100 million. And that's exactly what happened. They infected the servers for 2 months. They monitored the security protocols to make sure they understood when would be the best time to compromise and send wire transfers and to have monies go to the Philippines and some other countries. And that's exactly what they did. They just lurked on the servers, made sure they understood, okay, are weekends better? Who's monitoring things over the weekend? And believe it or not, see, a lot of these companies, you guys, banks, etc., they don't realize that the hackers don't take vacations. The hackers don't take the weekends off. As a matter of fact, they know that less security personnel are going to be available on the weekends and holidays and such. So that's when they do the things that they need to do to get money out of those accounts, etc. So yeah, right now, the New York Federal Reserve is out of $100 million, and we don't know whether or not there's further malware on those servers waiting to be exploited at a later date.
Exactly. Now, Chris was asking, Los Angeles Hospital had to pay ransom to get their data back, didn't they? And yes, they did. In the news, that's what they were telling us, that they actually had to pay to get their their data back to have the encryption key sent to them, and they were able to unlock their data. But again, this comes back down to what we talked about is,
right,
if they had the system set up and their security policy set up properly, would they have really had to pay the ransom? Right? Would they have just said, you know what, we're going to restore, we're going to go down, like they were down for that period of time. Why don't we stay down, restore from our backups, and then we're back and going. We don't have to pay the ransom. Because what happens is they're training the hackers right now that the system is broken. You know, if we do it, we're not going to get caught, and we can keep doing it because they don't know how to deal with it.
Well, one of the problems is, see, we have to consider that in the case of the hospital records, for instance, it's a really dangerous position to be in, because if I compromise Brandon's medical records as a hacker, now the records don't reflect the fact that he can't take penicillin, or that he's allergic to ampicillin or something. So if the records are modified by someone and you re-download bad records, guess what could happen? You could take something that's going to be detrimental to your health, if not fatal, and they don't know that. Now they got to scan through all the medical records and try to find out whether or not they've been compromised or not. And so yeah, it's a real tragic situation to be in, but we got to take precaution. We got to be responsible for our data and make sure that we have good copies and that we know where they're stored, and there's we can be in physical possession with a copy, and we can have again a trusted authority, like maybe a iCloud or a Dropbox or something like that, and then that way you constantly have updated versions of all of your information.
Right, and that's what we're talking about, like having a backup strategy of three storage areas, just in case it's a failover. And I mean, you look at catastrophes. Say you have a fire at your place. Well, your systems go down. Say you have an external hard drive that's connected. That's your backup. Well, you lose that. Well, that's one catastrophe. Now, what happens if you have it stored in the second place, maybe in the cloud? Then you can restore from that. At least your data is not lost. Yes, it's tragic. You went through that bad situation, but at least you can recover. And it's because in another place. Now, say, for example, the fire hit, and it was a tornado. The tornado hit your city. So it hit your place. It hit maybe you're working with a company that has a cloud service, and they're in the same city. Now they get hit as well. So having that third location, another hard drive or somewhere else, that you can restore from, gives you that continuity that, you can still recover. Now, this is a little an overkill when you have like home users. But when you're talking about businesses, this is something that is essential that they need to do. Chris was just asking, why don't insurance companies require mandatory backups daily to avoid having to pay ransom to ransomware? And Chris, this is a good question for you, our insurance expert. Like, is that part of the policy that when you're writing, insurance policies for people, that they have to have, proof of redundant backups, that they're doing, incremental backups through the week and then full backups through the weekend? What is that? Do you have a policy that for insurance? That's a good question by Chris to our security expert insurance, Chris. And I mean, most companies that I've worked with have that system in place already. They do incremental backups through the day, right? Or it's generally at night, and then they do a full backup, and it's at the week's end, or at least every 2 weeks. They're doing a full backup. What do you find, Monty?
Well, I find in addition to that, having those backups, it's not really implemented because, hospitals are just like a lot of companies. They're trying to embrace the networking of every piece of technology in the hospital environment. And they're putting a lot of emphasis on accessibility and portability and all of that. But again, when I even listen to doctors and certain practitioners talk on Blab, they talk about the convenience to the patient and how this is going to make their work easier. But no one's talking about, what am I doing for security protocols? And believe it or not, even with the Presbyterian Hospital in Los Angeles, no one talked about security levels. In other words, was there two-factor authentication? I don't think so. Was there multi-level of passwords and pins in terms of whether or not at one level certain people can get access to this level of security, and then another layer where you have to have even more stringent requirements to get access to data, for instance, and then maybe another level where you have to have some really stringent requirements to meet. I didn't hear the news media or anyone talk about various levels that the hospital was putting in place in order to get access to even minimum low-level data, if you will.
Well, this is the one great topic that we'll talk about in a future blab, is that Internet of Things, right? And this comes down to, when you're talking about the hospital, how many devices you got. Your heart monitor, you got your CT scans, you got your X-ray machines. All of them now are being networked. They have an IP address, right? Now, is security thought about on these operating systems and these devices? Like you said, zero, because they're thinking about how I can access all this data. How can I get a global client profile that I have their scans, I have their CT, I have their blood results, I have everything on this one device that I can walk up and I can pull everything up. And it's so convenient for the doctor and it's so convenient for the patient. Convenience, yes. And we're talking about like the CIA, confidentiality, data integrity, and availability. They're thinking about the availability, but the data integrity and the confidentiality is only to a certain point. When you're talking about like HIPAA, right? They have certain security policies in the data, but not the devices, right? And they're not really pushing on the devices of the encryption, how the data is stored, the potential compromise that these devices can have that can be the open holes for people to get in. And I mean, that's what I said. We'll talk about the Internet of Things on another blab, but that's a great point that you're bringing up, is that companies are dealing with so much great technology and new things that they're not looking at. The other side of the CIA triad is the confidentiality and the data integrity of the vulnerabilities or threats to those. They're thinking it's just great that we have this device that can do all these amazing things.
And then another thing, I don't want to scare you guys too much, but the country of Israel is at the forefront of cyber warfare and anti-terrorist related issues because of what's going on with Palestine and Israel all the time. We hear about all the skirmishes and all the conflicts, but they know a whole lot about how to protect physical. They know how to do physical security and cyber as well. But we're learning more and more that even a country like Israel, as advanced as they are, they have certain vulnerabilities that they're just now. And I copied and pasted a little bit of that information in there. And but yeah, they're learning how vulnerable a lot of their small businesses are as well. So yeah, we have to take a look at that. Even a country like Israel at their forefront is learning a whole lot about how to protect their businesses and such. So yeah, we know. So yeah, we have to understand that we're going to be up against it as well, because the Federal Reserve, as much resources as they have at their disposal, human and financial, they should have been more capable of protecting the accounts for the various other banks. So yeah, this is like a wild, wild west, and we really have to pay attention to net etiquette, if you will, when it comes to surfing the internet, using these devices, and letting manufacturers know that we need to know as much as possible whether or not these devices are up to date, as firmware up to date, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly. Now, Chris asked made a comment that Walter brings up is a great point. Why do companies, hospitals, and police departments put their data all in one area that's easily accessible to hackers? Technically, they don't do that. Like, they don't put it all in one area. Most of them have a server array that they have, and then they do have redundancies and backups. What happens is they're not really thinking. They're thinking of incident response, right? A lot of times they got their head down, and they don't have people that are truly security experts. And a lot of these companies, right, are true security experts. They have their network administrator that does the database, that does the account administrator, and understands security. Their companies are now starting to get to the point where they know that they need someone specifically for IT security, cybersecurity. And that's what Monty and I have been talking about over the last little bit, several blabs, is that the security industry is growing because they realize, and I think the last stat I got was there's a shortage of 200,000 jobs, IT security jobs in the United States alone. And they're expecting that to grow up to I think it was 2.5 million in 4 years. Right, so you can kind of look at the shortage of all the challenges that are going on right now, and then how the industry is just, we're understaffed, and how these compromises keep coming. So Chris, yeah, they do try to do that, like data. They have data continuity where they have in different areas and different storage areas, right? And I'd be surprised at a hospital if it doesn't have it. But most companies that I've worked with have those backup systems, have different arrays of servers, so they don't get affected. But now they're thinking of different things, of redundancies and backups and access to content. They're not thinking at this point a lot of times is about ransomware. This is now this new thing they have to put in their policies, how to deal with ransom, how to train their staff.
Exactly. This is the trade-off, and Brandon is making it very clear and concise. But just keep in mind, as well, that what he's saying basically, there's a trade-off. You want convenience, and typically, see, when you implement a way of protecting person's ability to send email, do chatting online, to surf the web or something, typically you don't want to discourage your customers too much, or users too much, as far as making things secure. See, unfortunately, what happens is a lot of times when you make things secure, people, that means you got to do extra steps. That means I got to do something extra, and it takes a little bit more time. So yeah, we're learning more and more that we can implement security and not slow you down so much, or not have you go through like IT training or something just to send an email or text message back and forth. And Apple was struggling. I was reading an article. It's kind of interesting. Apple was looking at upgrading its iCloud security protocols because of the situation in San Bernardino that a lot of you heard us talk about, and you heard about on the news as well. Those Apple did a very good job as far as securing our devices, particularly the one in San Bernardino. It was encrypted to the point where the FBI wasn't able to get access to the data. But what the news media didn't talk about was that the iCloud-based services is another area where that data was stored. And unfortunately, Apple did allow the FBI to get access to the cloud-based data, but the phone itself, after so many attempts, they were locked out and they couldn't get into the phones. So yeah, just remember that we can have, we'll get into this in another session probably, but when you lock down a device, that's a good step. You're going in the right direction. But what about the cloud-based, or what about the networks? We communicate through our cell phones over networks, and if those cellular phone networks or if those cloud-based services aren't locked down properly as well, then we're going to have a problem. Right,
and that's true. That's the thing we're going to talk about. And I mean, this is why we're doing cybersecurity for you and your business. And that's why the high level label is, because cybersecurity affects people on all different levels. It's not just the point. Think of every technology you use and then add security behind it. iPhone security, cloud security, car security, personal security. Add it, because this is what happens in this technology today. You have to think in that mindset that what's the security of that device, that technology, that app. And it's all levels, from personal to, hey, I have a baby monitor, I'm using a Fitbit or something along that, to your business where you're having servers, routers, switches, your office space. All that needs to be secure, and you have to think about that. And that brings me to that question that Chris has on the screen right now, is why don't CEOs care enough about cybersecurity for their data? It seems like it takes a breach for each company, for the particular company, to do anything about their cybersecurity. And like we talked about, and Chris, is bringing up an outside view, is that they do care about their data, but the education, the knowledge is behind, right? They're behind on this knowledge because it's just one of those things. And you're seeing they're going to the authoritative figures right now, the police, the FBI, and going, what do we do? And they don't know. So that's why we're so far behind when it comes to securing this, is that we're running to the point where they're just saying, I don't know what to do, pay the ransom. Right? Pay the ransom and just go. Versus there's people like Monty and myself and other experts there saying, you have to plan for this. You have to be proactive, that if it gets hacked, if we get compromised, if we have ransomware, how are we going to recover as a company without having to pay the ransomware? Because again, they get hit in the hospital, Presbyterian Hospital could be hit again and again, because what happens is, a lot of people think it's this hacker hacking a server. and it's a network administrator, the security administrator going against the hacker. No, it's Jane Doe, who's a nurse that has no clue about security and probably in her 50s or 60s, that clicked on an email and went through that process and kind of go, oh, I didn't know that did that. It's that vulnerabilities that they have in their systems that compromise them. And that's why I'm saying is we have to look at security as a whole, the infrastructure, the technology, and the training.
Yeah, I think last week we talked about a term called gamification. And gamification really talks about the psychology of employees, the psychology of the managers or whatever. Because see, when we play in these video games, we're typically rewarded with a badge or something, and you feel, you get some points or whatever, likes or whatever, and you feel good about what you just did in a game, for instance. And we're learning in the cybersecurity world that if we can gamify a lot of things that we're doing, in other words, if my employees are given some sort of rewards or points or badges or acknowledgement for pointing out phishing scams through the email, if they catch something, some security related slip up, where somebody's trying to tailgate somebody going into the company, or coming onto the company premises. In other words, we want to give people the incentive of spotting and talking about things and bringing up these issues and rewarding them and acknowledging that. So it's something about it when we acknowledge, when we reward someone for doing the right thing as compared to just brandishing them when they do the wrong thing. So yeah, if I can pat you on the back and say, look, you found a link in an email and it looks like it was going to a site that has nothing to do with anything that should have been put in that email, for instance. And I give you those points, and then that way every day when you come into work and we're learning more about this, you're looking for something that doesn't look right, doesn't feel right. So yeah, we're trying to change the psychology of people, the psychology of customers, the psychology of the employees, and maybe when you find out that your firmware on your router is not up to date, maybe I can give you something for that, or whatever it is. So we just need to think differently, and however we can do that, then that's what we have to do. We have to be on top of this because this is a serious area, and as Brandon was pointing out, if you're looking for a career, you may want to look into cybersecurity in the industry, because there are so many different areas. I'll just name a few of them. I pasted something in there, but for instance, security analytics. Something. Do you know what SEIM? I have to look that up. I didn't define it. But,
SIEM?
Yeah, SIEM. And then we have threat intelligence. Then we have mobile security, and we have cloud security. So you name it, there's a space for everyone. I think someone on the chat session, probably Chris or somebody, mentioned brokerage or consultants or something. So there's some different places where they're going to need help, and where we're going to find people going into and making careers out of this.
So SIEM stands for Security Information and Event Management.
Oh, okay. Right.
But yeah, I mean, the one thing you gotta too, and I mean, it's not like, and I want to kind of put this precedent out there, it's not something that you just jump in a career and hopefully you're going to make money. You have to love what you do. You have to be obsessed about this. You almost have to be a little OCD, because things are changing, and the amount of information and technology you have to learn is a lot. And I've had people go, oh, I want to learn cybersecurity because they think of the big paycheck. They think, oh, it's a great career. But when they learn how much work it is to learn about coding and policies and procedures and education, all that, they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. I just want to get a job. So if you love cybersecurity and you're obsessed about it, I mean, you wake up in the morning, awesome, get into it. But if you're thinking of it as just a kind of like a quick payday and you're going to have a career in it because it's just good money because the industry's asking for it, be mindful of that. And I want to make sure people come into security with the right expectation. I wake up in the morning and I have Feedly. I'm reading articles of what's going on through the day in security. Like that's the thing you have to do when it comes to this industry, because you're always learning. You're a student of life. I will never be an expert in one area. And I want to put this clear out. If someone calls you an expert in security, they're delusional. right? And I don't mean to insult you, but the real truth of it is we're always learning. We're always students because tomorrow, something new is going to come out. The day after, something new. So we're a student constantly of cybersecurity, and we're always learning. If you have that mindset, you're always going to grow. You're always going to be helping people. When you come out of this where you have an expert, you don't need to learn anymore, you're going to get lost in the sea of people that, and the incidents that happen. You have to keep learning.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say real quickly, you get up in the morning, as Brandon pointed out, you get up in the morning, you're thinking about security and vulnerabilities and headlines. What's going on? Who's been compromised? Who's been hit? And then at 12 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the morning, you're still thinking about, did you miss anything? So, yeah, if you don't have a passion for this, don't get into it. Because the things that I do for a living, as far as physical security, it never ends. I'm always thinking about new ideas. And again, that starts from morning and it doesn't stop until I go to bed in the evening. So whether or not I make money or not is not the issue. I think if you're good at what you do, you're going to make some money. So that shouldn't be the driving force. Hopefully you like resolving, solving problems for people. And you like making sure that you help someone else. Because when you help other people, that's typically a very good reward. That'll keep you motivated, because if you approach this, as Brandon pointed out, with the wrong idea in mind, you're going to be disappointed, because it's a lot of work, and you probably won't last very long if you head into this thinking the wrong things. Being an expert usually implies that you know a little bit more than the next person, but it doesn't mean that you can sit back and relax thinking that you can stop learning, because you can't.
No, not especially when it comes to the IT field, and specifically as we're talking about IT security, it is ongoing. New applications, like look at the Internet of Things. That's a sea of learning, right? That's something that Monty and myself are going to go through years of learning, because new devices are coming out, new technology, how the operating system works, what's the code in the back, and how do they connect, and we're going to keep learning on that. So I mean, that's the beauty of our field, is you never stop learning. So if you have that seeking of truth and knowledge and education, it's a great field. So we got two more questions Chris has here. Why do hospitals and clinics still use XP when it makes everything less secure? Why do ATMs still use XP? And this comes down to corporations right now and their change management process. A lot of them are behind because they have to test their applications, they have to test their services, they have to test everything out, how it works, they have to harden it, they have to do all that, and it takes them time, right? And maybe it's not up front of mind, because a lot of companies, front end is about dealing with their clients, making revenue, making money. Change management on these sides take a little bit back door until it's essential. Like when XP rolls out that they no longer support it, then they'll move up to the next, right? They'll move up maybe to Windows 7. But they won't go to Windows 10. They'll go one version up. And that's what you generally find with companies, is because it takes so much time for them to do the testing and making sure that they're not going to have a product that's going to fail. So it's kind of one of those happy balances when you have a company, right, and you have the hundreds, if not thousands of employees, and you have applications, maybe even proprietary. Everything has to be tested, so it takes time.
Yeah, see, one thing, I got to play devil's advocate, only because, see, we have to understand that, it would be nice for us to wave a wand and make sure that every corporation has up the latest, greatest security protocols in place. That would be ideal. But see, this is what actually happens, you guys. When you come out with these new pieces of equipment, new products and such, you don't initially anticipate hackers hacking into your car or your pacemaker or something. You learn after the fact that the hackers are trying to take advantage. So, we got a legacy of hardware and devices and equipment out there, and they weren't designed for this new world where we're in right now. So, we're going to be making a transition for a long, long time in terms of locking down, equipment that was made 20, 30 years ago or something, and trying to upgrade slowly but surely. So that's why it's inherent upon us to look around your company, talk to your boss, talk to your employees about, what are we using? I think we could do things a better way. I think there are other solutions out there. There's people like Brandon that you can call and find out more about how to protect and how to get a strategy in place that's going to keep you in business as compared to being put out of business. See, this is what's important. See, the hackers are learning more and more about even nonprofit organizations like churches and different nonprofits. They go in there and they deplete those accounts from churches and other nonprofit organizations. And so you don't have a lot of recourse when you are not a larger corporation or a larger entity or a larger organization overall. So you typically give in and you try to write it off. You try to work with the banks to get your money back, et cetera, et cetera. But because you don't know a whole lot about security, those are very vulnerable targets. So if you have a church that you belong to or a nonprofit that you're associated with, talk to them about the idea that those are one of the hot areas for hackers. You know, they go into those particular organizations' accounts because they don't get a chance to take a look at what it means to have these things in place.
Exactly. So Chris has a question back to ransomware. I'm thinking of buying one Bitcoin, $450 just for information and learning purposes. Is this a fool's errand, or do anyone have any experience transacting in this new cryptocurrency? So I know, like, the base knowledge, I've never worked with it yet myself and buying Bitcoins. What about yourself, Monty? Have you worked with Bitcoins?
Yeah, almost, I think a year or two after inception, I decided to take a look at it, and it made a lot of sense to me reading a white paper, for instance. There's something called a white paper. You guys may want to Google it and take a look at it. It just makes a lot of sense. It made a lot of sense to me, and I got a background in finances and economics and investing and all that. And it does resolve a lot of problems. So,
now, do you have the link to that white paper?
No, but I think if you Google, I can drop a link in there.
Yeah, if you can, because Chris is asking if you have any information, like a white paper on that.
Oh yeah. The white paper was uploaded to the internet a long time ago by this gentleman by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto, and he made absolutely sure that if anyone wanted to analyze what he was doing with Bitcoin and the blockchain technology, that they wouldn't have a problem getting that white paper and downloading it. Let me see. I think this is a link to it. But yeah,
there's actually one from Bitcoin itself. So to help Chris out.
Okay. Yeah. There are a lot of evangelists and different people in the Bitcoin community that can point you in the right direction in terms of getting more information about it.
So there we go. Now we're coming up on, we got about 4 more minutes. Guys, thank you so much, first and foremost, for everyone coming out, all the questions. Chris, for all your questions coming out. Also, Chris, our resident insurance agent here, to just keeping the information flowing, helping people answer any questions. I mean, it's amazing. One thing I ask you to do, any friends, any family members that you know, any business partners, colleagues, even your clients, share this out. They need to come out to these. I mean, as you can tell, we're not trying to pitch and sell. We're not trying to, promote our wares. We're trying to educate the community, because right now we're so far behind when it comes to cybersecurity. There needs to be education. There needs to be these forums that we have these discussions to make sure that we're doing our security, our due diligence. Because if we can do our due diligence, that will help the people around us, and that'll help the companies that we work with. And you guys can, in the companies that you work with, you can have the conversation saying, hey, I heard about ransomware. Are we doing these things? And they're going, wow, we never thought about that. Oh yeah, we're thinking about that. What's your insight? And now you can bring back an intelligent conversation saying, here's what we've talked about, and here's what I recommend. So you can be the advocate for your companies and your friends, right? And then let them know, here's how to protect yourself. And just reiterate, make sure you have a redundant backup. Make sure you have your backups done. The links or anything that you receive, make sure they're from valid links and people that you know. If there's something that you feel in your gut, or you just question, or maybe even you're not paying attention because you're so busy and you're kind of going out and you're going to click on something, make sure you check before you click on something, right? And there's a site that you can go to. I'm just pulling up right now. Where does this link go to? What? What's that, Monty?
Brandon, you can hover over, a lot of times you can hover over the link in an email or something, right? Yeah. And a lot of times it shows you, depending upon what browser you're on.
Yeah.
Shows you where that link actually goes to.
Yeah.
And if it's supposed to point to Citibank and it looks like it points to a bun grabber from Romania, then that's probably not a good link to click on.
Or there's a long script behind it. It's google.com and this code behind it, right? Again, that's why I provide that URL there. Where does this link go? Where you can copy that in and then paste it, and it can tell you, does it go to that valid link or does it go somewhere that you have no clue?
Exactly.
But again, when you're trying to protect from ransomware, backups. You can always recover cost effectively from a backup that you have than having to pay the ransom. And we talked about $200 to $5,000. I mean, how many of us can buy 2-3 computers for $5,000? Right. You know, I mean, if you want to be able to start, and we talk about companies that have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you look at that for companies, they're paying staff to be there. For them to have that staff to recover is more cost effective than them having to pay the ransom. Yes, it's scary at first because you don't know what to do, but when they have the policies and the education in place, it's easier to recover. It's, again, you know, when the first time any server goes down, when you first install a server and it goes down, you freak out. Oh my God, my server is down. But when you go through the second time, you have the policies, you know how to recover from it. Then it's like, oh, the server's down. Okay, well, we have to do this. We have to back up from there. We have to recover this way. Check the UPS, check that. Okay, we're good. We're up and going. Right now, because it's so new, people are scared. And that's why we're having these conversations about, okay, what to do. So, Monty, do you have any final points you want to cover?
The last thing I think we need to address is, well, there's two things.
Yeah.
Get your portable hard drive, okay? When you go out today, go to your favorite electronics store, or if you go to Amazon, wherever you get it from, get your portable hard drive, get an external hard drive, put that in your home, in your office. That's going to be your main source, and do your cloud-based service, okay? If you want to go to Amazon, if you want to go to iCloud and use that one, if you want to use Dropbox, I don't care what you use, put your files on a remote server. That way, when you're out and about, you go on vacation, or if you're mobile like I am, you can always access those cloud-based services. Or just pull out that portable hard drive and get your data off of there.
And here's something I want to add to that, Monty. Something that you guys need to know. Don't leave your backup portable drive always plugged in. Plug it in and then do your backup and then unplug it. The reason why is if someone gets ransomware, they're going to ransomware encrypt the whole thing, everything that's connected. So that's why it's good to do Friday backups, right? Plug it in, do your backup, run the full backup, and then unplug it.
Right. That portable device, that can be your unplugged version, and no one will get access to that one.
Right.
And get the last thing is realize that some companies recover and some companies don't. There is a number of companies in the brokerage industry. Granted, they woke up one morning and $300 to $400 million was gone. There was a compromised software update that where everything just was wiped out in an instant, and they were not able to recover from that financial loss. So let's make sure that we understand it doesn't cost as much to be preventative as compared to try and fix a major problem after the fact.
Right. No, and that's true, and that's why we're having these weekly discussions, these weekend forums for you and cyber chat or cybersecurity for you and your business, so that you can have these discussions, you can educate yourself. All I ask for you guys right now is just make sure you share this out, share it with your family, your friends, your business partners, your clients. Have them come out and ask questions. That's what we're here for. Right? And again, if it goes later on that they need other advice, we're here. But the main thing right now is they're here for the conversation, so they can get some information, ask some personal information that they need for their personal life, their business, their kids, their family, their entrepreneurship, their small business, their medium-sized business, whatever that may be. They have a forum to talk to people. Nice. Sounds good. So, guys, I'd like to thank you for coming out. Make sure you share this out. Again, we're going to do next Tuesday. What I'm thinking is we have two topics I really want to cover, and I want you guys to vote on them right now. Would you rather us talk about Apple and what's going on with the FBI or the Internet of Things? Comment below, because, I mean, those are two hot topics right now. Apple and the privacy and what to do, and then the Internet of Things, which is a huge topic. And at the RSA conference, which is I think it's the Regional Security Alliance, right, they're talking about the Internet of Things hugely how this is going to be something that's going to be a big topic when it comes to personal security, business security. I mean, when we're talking about like bringing your own device, the BYOD, it's huge right now. So Chris is saying Internet of Things. Anyone else? What do you guys think? What do you think, Monty? What should we cover next week?
I don't know. Both of those are really good. Let's see what happens. Whether or not there's a lot more information going on with Apple, but I think the Internet of Things, something tells me that that's going to be a real big one. But I don't know. I don't know for sure which one is more important. Both of them are so important considering the.
So we got two people right now. We've got Chris is saying the Internet of Things. Michael's saying the Apple FBI, the bloody battle. Right, that between them.
What would you prefer, Brandon?
I think what we'll do is because right now the Apple. Michael just changed. I'm on to the Internet of Things as well. So I think right now because the Apple topic is going to affect the Internet of Things and everything, all the privacy, our security, our cloud servers. I think we're going to let's discuss the Apple topic of privacy because it's going to affect not just Apple. It's going to affect all other companies too. Once they set precedents,
kind of bleeds over into the Internet of Things.
Well, it bleeds over to everything because, as we know, if they set precedents that a legal precedents have been set that they can get access with one company, they can get access with all companies.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. As we know, it's because now there's a legal precedent. Apple has given us rights to it. Now because we want to go to Google, we want to go to Microsoft, we want to go to Evernote, we want to go here, and we need access because this guy's a criminal. Now, because they set precedents in the legal terms, now they can go through this.
So maybe we can kill two birds with one stone. Probably.
What do you want, guys? Chicken or the egg? FBI set my traps 20 years ago. What precedents? So this is the thing. This is the thing we're talking about, right? Once the legal precedent's set, it's set.
Yeah.
All right. So awesome. So let's do that next week, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be doing another blab, and we'll be covering Apple versus the FBI and privacy, and really about how it's going to relate to everything. And I'll see if I can get a lawyer to come in as well to kind of discuss the on the legal side.
Cool.
Awesome, Monty.
I think it's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
So yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Make sure again, share it with your family, friends, get them in there because it's going to affect everyone. It's Eastern Daylight Time, which is right now it's 11 a.m. So to give you kind of an idea of the time zones.
Okay.
So you guys come on out and again, make sure you invite everyone that you know because again, it's something that's going to affect them on all different levels. They might not think about it but really it is. I mean, when it comes to privacy, you want to make sure you have some level of privacy for what you're doing.
Wow.
All right, guys, see you next week.
That's the service here. So you guys come back and let's see how far we can dig into these areas.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Perfect. Have a good day, guys.
Okay, good seeing you, Brandon. You guys have fun.